the fascinating comments in regards to Trump Turnberry. Of course, President Trump is in office and will be in office through 2028 at least, and into the beginning of 2029. They're still looking for a venue for 2028. The RNA is for the Open. Next year it's Royal Birkdale, St. Andrews after that. Seemed open to the possibility of having the Open at Trump Turnberry prior to him coming into the chief executive role. That necessarily wasn't the case. What did you take from that?
I think it was evidence that when you're choosing venues for majors, there are really three questions. There's where, why, and then a why not. And there are three strikes against Turnberry right now, and the quality of the golf course isn't one of them. But the quality of the golf course is only part of the reason why major venues are chosen. And the three strikes against Turnberry are ownership, logistics, and financials. And there is a perception, as voiced by Mark Durbin's predecessor, Martin Slumbers, that if they held a major championship on Donald Trump's golf course, that the focus would not be on the championship. And having had a women's Open at Trump Bedminster, there's plenty of evidence to back up the fear of grandstanding. The logistics is another issue. It's a very narrow one road into Turnberry and out of it. There isn't a town nearby. And that's also part of the reasons why he talked about Muirfield potentially being problematic as a future venue, despite its great history, because there are also infrastructure problems there. And the financials are a big deal as well. The last Open at Turnberry was 2009. There were 120,000 spectators on site. There are going to be 275,000 here this week. The potential cash loss for the RNA in their biggest financial driver of the year to go to a venue that has that kind of limitations in terms of logistics and financials, I don't think they're in a position to do it. But as long as Donald Trump is pushing for it, I think what they're going to end up doing is say, OK, well, let's have a feasibility study, and that would kick the can down the road for a couple of years. But they do have options. They talked about potentially going to Portmarnock in Dublin, which also has some logistical challenges that they will address. But they have options that don't come with baggage. And I think that's something that the RNA will probably in the long term be keen to avoid.
Where do you think the Open should expand to? Should it expand to other courses around the UK?
I would love. This is my first trip to Ireland. Unfortunately, at 50 years old, it's my first trip, and I waited too long to come here. Obviously, this place is spectacular. The venue's spectacular. The town is quaint. It's fantastic. I've been here for 4 days, and I'm having a great time. I would love to see another Open Championship venue in Ireland. And based on a lot of my friends who have taken trips all around the world who are golf architecture nerds and want to see the greatest golf courses in the world, they have played all over Ireland. And they have told me countless times how great the golf is in this part of the world and in Ireland specifically. And I think, and Portmarnock was right at the tip of their tongue as far as like one of the greatest golf courses on the planet. As long as those feasibility issues can be solved, which I'm sure they can, I would love to see another Open Championship in the country of Ireland. I think it'd be fantastic.
Now, the courses and the people are fantastic here in Ireland and Northern Ireland. I want to bring in GolfChannel.com senior writer Rex Haggerty, I know was in the media center for that press conference. And I'm going to get back to Turnberry with you, Rex, in regards to the fact that the RNA has had discussions with Trump officials. Do you feel like this possibility is creeping towards a reality that the Open could be played at Trump Turnberry?
I think there was various sources that I talked to last week during the Scottish Open, and this is a hot topic over here in Scotland, just about where it's going to end up over the next few years. Because as Ao just pointed out, there are some venues you could add to the rotation. Certainly Portmarnock would be in the conversation, but if you do that, you're probably going to push another venue down the road. And the two you would probably focus on right now is Turnberry and Muirfield. When it comes to Turnberry, Eamon is exactly right. Right now, it is a political hot potato, and it's probably difficult for the RNA to wrap their mind around the idea of doing it over the next few years because of what that would bring. It is fascinating, though, when you start talking about the infrastructure issues. I would argue that almost every Open venue outside of St. Andrews has some sort of infrastructure liabilities when it comes to getting those large crowds that the RNA wants. I will go back to last week. Renaissance Club literally butts up right against Muirfield. I was talking with a member at Muirfield, and they were talking about what they have learned hosting the Scottish Open over the last few years. And I can tell you the crowds last week were not as big as what we'll see here, but they're certainly bigger than what you would expect. I think they're learning a lot about how they can handle traffic flow and where they can park people. So there is an optimism, at least in East Lothian, where Muirfield is, that they're ready to make that move sooner rather than later.
Yeah, Rex, we'll be interested to see what the R&A does. I want to talk finally, guys, here at the desk about the official World Golf Ranking. Of course, the R&A has a seat at the table in deciding which organizations get world ranking points. LIV Golf has applied for world ranking points once again. Didn't give us much in that press conference, but he was asked that question. What did you take away?
Well, for me personally, I want 5 questions answered. I want and this is pretty much in order of my importance, what I think is the most important. How do you handle 50-player fields? I think that can be handled. That's not a big deal. We do it on the PGA Tour all the time, so I don't think that's big. That's a big deal, field size. 2, how do you handle 3 rounds versus 4? That's a bigger issue, I think. I think you got to figure out that. Okay, I think that can be handled. 3, how do you handle team play? That is a massive sticking point for me as far as the can make the competition. It can compromise the competition, obviously, for obvious reasons when you think about it. 4, how do you handle shotgun starts? Now, this is something that is that's a real craw in me. It sticks in me, and I do not like shotgun starts. I think it's very parochial. I think it reminds me of your local club matches with a bucket of beer and a cigar and loud music, and I'm not into that when you're talking about serious golf that's going to get world ranking points. I'm a little bit.
The Players' Championship end on.
Yeah, I don't want to see
it.
Yeah, let's end the Players' Championship on 2 with crowning a champion on 2 versus the 18th. That's pretty ridiculous when you really think about it. So that's a huge sticking point with me, and I don't think it's being talked about enough. And then, obviously, I think one of the ones that they're thinking about is access and relegation, and I think that's another huge sticking point. And I think that can be solved. But shotgun starts have got to go the way of the dodo.
Well, he did mention that they have submitted an application. The technical committee of the official World Golf Rankings now reviews that just to see if it actually meets the specifications, because the OWGR did tell LIV 18 months ago what the sticking points were, which was around the meritocracy element and the involvement of team golf. But there is a little subtext here. Even in their statements, they single out Trevor Immelman, and they specifically mention Trevor as the new chairman of the official World Golf Rankings. And I think they're trying to mount a little pressure campaign to make Trevor feel as though he's being positioned as a potential object to this. There's a process to be worked through. Trevor Immelman is not a guy who's going to be bullied into short-circuiting a process.
We shall see. A lot to chew on over the next few months in regards to world ranking points.